Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are pulling up a stack of source material to get into a novel that, it really dominated the bestseller lists. It's Kristin Hannah's 2018 smash hit, The Great Alone.
It was absolutely huge.
Yeah, and this book is fascinating because it uses this backdrop of, unforgiving 1970s Alaska to explore something really internal.
It's all about how trauma and violence and addiction can create a personal frontier that's just as dangerous as any, physical wilderness.
Exactly. And it clearly resonated. It sold over 2 million copies, won the Goodreads Choice Award. People connected with this story on a deep level.
They really did.
So our mission today is to go beyond just the plot summary. We're going to dissect that gripping story for sure. But more importantly, we want to unpack the really complex psychology of the Allbright family.
And specifically, Leni's resilience, which is a huge part of it. We're going to look at that through the lens of attachment theory.
Right. But first, to really get the Allbrights' quest for a quote-unquote fresh start, you have to understand the context, right?
Oh, absolutely. We have to plant ourselves firmly in 1974 Alaska, America's last frontier. And the national mood at the time is just crucial. The Vietnam War is over, but its psychological fallout is really just beginning.
The country's just grappling with all this instability, socially, politically.
And that national chaos is perfectly mirrored in the family's own internal turmoil. So they're seeking refuge in this tiny community called K-Neck, believing that the sheer difficulty of the wilderness will somehow save them.
Okay, so let's unpack that central dynamic. At the heart of this desperate move, you've got three people, Ernt, Cora, and their 13-year-old daughter, Leni.
And Leni is so important. She's really our window into this whole chaotic world.
The catalyst, as you were saying, is Ernt. He's a Vietnam veteran, a former POW, and he has come home. Well, he's shattered. He is struggling with severe, untreated PTSD.
And he's convinced that the demands of the wilderness, just the pure act of survival, is going to be the cure for what's inside him.
Which is the first great irony of the novel, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
Because at first, Leni is just captivated by Alaska's beauty, its silence. But the family is. They're utterly unprepared for the day-to-day reality of it.
They think freedom is just doing whatever they want.
But Alaska teaches them a very hard lesson very quickly, that freedom is only earned through discipline and preparation. The wilderness just does not care about your intentions.
And the setting itself, it feels like a character, almost an antagonist. Alaska's vastness represents this promise of freedom, but it also creates this immense, terrifying danger.
Precisely. They're trying to escape the modern world, only to land in a place that strips away every single buffer. It leaves them exposed not just to the elements, but to the damage Ernt is carrying inside him.
So the wilderness isn't even the main threat?
Not at all. It's the spotlight that reveals the threat that was there all along.
But, at first they're not totally alone. That internal chaos is actually buffered a bit by the community.
Right. They arrive in Connect and are, kind of surprisingly, welcomed by these tough-as-nails pioneers.
And the sources really highlight characters like Tough Large Marge, who runs the general store. She's a former prosecutor, and she becomes this immediate moral anchor for Cora and Leni.
Yeah, she's amazing.
The community offers help, warmth, but Ernt, he just rejects it. His paranoia starts to build, and it's fueled by his PTSD and also by this eccentric local, Mad Earl.
And that just pushes the family into this really dangerous isolation. The conflict is set up right away.
Oh, yeah.
It's connection versus isolation.
And we know which one wins, at least for a while.
Yeah.
That isolation is just the perfect breeding ground for disaster.
Uh-huh.
Because once winter hits, the danger shifts completely, doesn't it? The story goes from being about struggling against nature to struggling against each other.
It happens so fast. The brutal Alaskan winter descends, the days just shrink into darkness, and that's when Ernt's mental state completely collapses.
His PTSD comes roaring back. We see this toxic cycle of paranoia, alcohol, and then this just horrific domestic violence aimed at Cora.
And that little cabin they built, which was supposed to be their sanctuary.
Mm-hmm. It becomes a terrifying psychological prison. The danger of freezing to death outside is nothing compared to the violence happening inside.
This whole part of the book is just a gut-wrenching look at untreated trauma. Ernt isn't just a simple villain. He is the embodiment of how psychological wounds don't just affect one person.
They fracture the entire family.
Exactly. They trap everyone in this cycle of fear.
And the sources are pretty clear that Leni's survival really depends on finding some kind of stability outside of that cabin. She finds it in Matthew Walker, the local boy.
He's so important for her. Such a compassionate kid.
Their relationship It starts as this quiet secret, but it becomes this vital source of warmth for Leni. And we also have to talk about his father, Tom Walker.
Yes, a real leader in the community. He represents a completely different kind of strength.
He actually stands up to Ernt courageously. And he gives Leni this model of a healthy, stable masculinity that's just a total counterweight to her father's rage.
And Tom's presence gives Leni a glimpse of what a family should look like, strength with responsibility. Without that model, the darkness in her home would just be absolute.
But even with that support, things are they're unsustainable.
It all comes to a head.
It does. The family reaches this inevitable, violent climax. Ernst's brutality peaks, and he nearly kills Cora. And in that moment, Cora, driven by sheer desperation and what the novel calls maternal instinct, she shoots Ernt.
An act of self-defense.
Right. And Leni helps her hide the truth. They flee Connect for Seattle, leaving everyone they love behind. It's a shocking, morally gray turning point.
And this is the moment where the book moves away from being just a survival story and into this much deeper psychological territory.
I think so, too.
Absolutely. Because that act and them running away, it forces us to look really closely at the mother-daughter relationship. And we could do that through the lens of attachment theory, which is where you get the real aha moment of this whole story.
So for anyone listening who might not be familiar, can you just give us a quick rundown of attachment theory?
Sure. In its simplest form, it's about how a child's earliest relationship, usually with a parent, creates the foundation for how they connect with others for the rest of their life. It's like the operating system for relationships.
So if that foundation is secure, you learn that love is reliable and you're valued.
Right. But if it's disrupted, it often leads to what we call dysregulated attachments later in life.
And that's the thing. When you see adult clients who've witnessed the kind of abuse Leni did, they often struggle. They might repeat those cycles or they find it impossible to trust people. But Leni, she emerges differently. How does the novel make that believable?
Well, the paradox is all in her mother, Cora. Cora is a deeply devoted mother, but she stays with Ernt. She keeps choosing this abusive cycle.
And the sources suggest that's probably rooted in her own childhood, right? Her parents were cold, emotionally unavailable.
Exactly, which likely led to what we'd call an avoidant attachment style for her. She is avoiding true vulnerability, and instead she clings to this chaotic relationship with Ernt. Because, in a strange way, it's a kind of stability she understands.
A terrible stability.
A terrible, familiar stability. So her attachment style means she can't save herself. She doesn't feel she's worthy of it. But, and this is the key, the sources all highlight that she has an unshakably healthy and nurturing attachment to Leni.
They're like peas in a pod.
That's the phrase. So while Cora won't save herself from Ernt, she will fiercely, violently protect her daughter. That act of shooting him isn't about her own self-preservation. It's about maternal protection.
That distinction is so profound because Leni witnesses the absolute worst of human behavior, but she also experiences this unconditional, life-saving love from the person who matters most.
And that secure core, that foundational knowledge that she is worthy of being protected, is what makes it possible and believable that she can emerge from that trauma and fully love someone else like Matthew in a secure way.
So she doesn't repeat the cycle.
She breaks it. That secure attachment is her anchor. It's why this story, which is so dark, ultimately has so much hope in it.
It totally changes how you think about loyalty in the book. Cora's loyalty to Ernt was a trap, but Leni's connection to Cora, and later to Matthew, shows how healthy love can be the ultimate refuge.
Exactly.
Okay, but can I push back on that a little bit?
Please do.
If Cora's self-worth was so shattered by her own past, is it possible that the shooting was less about this, purely unconditional maternal love and more about finally desperately choosing her own survival?
That's a powerful and necessary question.
Like maybe she couldn't admit it to herself, but she had to live to protect Leni, making it a dual act for both of them.
I think the motivation is tangled. The sources suggest that you're right. Perhaps she had to frame it as being for Leni because she just wasn't capable of saying, I deserve to live. But for Leni, the outcome is what matters.
The effect was the same.
The effect was that of an anchor being dropped in a storm. No matter how complicated Cora's motive was, the unconditional protection Leni felt is what created that secure base and allowed her to break free.
And that empowerment is what drives the whole next chapter of her life. After they flee to Seattle, she starts that long road toward building a future.
A stable adult future.
She goes to college, creates stability, she even becomes a mother. But then years later, after Cora dies from cancer, Leni is drawn back to connect.
She has to go back for closure, but also maybe to find the part of herself she had to leave there.
And that return is essential for her final transformation. She's not the scared girl anymore. She reunites with Matthew, who's done his own healing from his own traumas.
And together, they make a conscious choice to build a life rooted in the land that once nearly destroyed them. They transform that site of pain, Alaska, into a source of strength.
So, okay, what does this all mean for us? For the learner who maybe isn't wrestling a veteran in a remote cabin, but is still navigating a complex world?
Well, the story gives us some really profound survival lessons. First one is that resilience is learned. Leni doesn't start strong. She is forced to become strong. Her grit is developed through loss.
It's an active process. We often think of resilience as something you just have, but she proves it's a muscle you build.
Exactly. Through adversity, not in spite of it. Second lesson, linking back to the setting, is about nature's instruction. Alaska is indifferent, it demands respect, but it offers this brutal clarity when human relationships get messy.
So when you're facing your own wilderness, a stressful job, whatever, stepping back and respecting those primal demands of life, like discipline, can recenter you.
Third, and maybe this is the most important one, is that community matters. The lifelines that Leni and Cora found in Connect, Large, Marge, Tom Walker, Matthew, they were crucial.
Ernt chose isolation, and it destroyed him.
Right. And Cora and Leni chose connection, and it led to their recovery. Human connection is just non-negotiable for healing.
And finally, the book just screams that freedom requires courage. For Leni and Cora, freedom wasn't given to them. It had to be, violently claimed.
It took immense bravery to break that cycle and rebuild a life.
It really reminds you that choosing yourself, choosing a healthy path, that might be the greatest act of survival there is.
Before we wrap up, we should probably touch on the author, Kristin. Her background is pretty interesting. She was a lawyer before she became a global bestseller.
That legal background feels so key, doesn't it? Even though it's fiction, her experience with conflict and justice really informs the plot. I mean, you think about Large Marge, the former prosecutor who's the moral compass.
Or the really complex moral gray area after Cora shoots Ernt. That legal framework gives the whole dilemma a weight that feels earned, not just sensationalized for drama.
And that sense of reality comes from her research, too. Hannah based a lot of this on the real experiences of Vietnam vets and the insane challenges of Alaskan homesteaders back then.
It grounds the whole story. It's why it feels so raw and authentic.
Yeah. And that authenticity is what stays with you. The Great Alone uses that unforgiving wilderness and Ernst's abusive cabin as these twin prisons, physical and psychological. And so if isolation and darkness fueled Ernst's paranoia back in 1974, it gets you thinking. What current day environments, whether they're physical places we hide in or the virtual echo chambers we live in online, what's silently breeding that same kind of isolation in our own lives?
That's a heavy question.
And maybe more importantly, what Large Marge connections, what conscious, healthy bonds can you identify in your own life right now as your essential lifelines? The secure attachments that make sure you can stay resilient and choose courage, even when the darkness descends. That's something worth thinking about long after you finish the book.
A powerful and timely thought to end on.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into The Great Alone. We'll catch you next time.